Night Watch Archives, Case File 005, Devil's Den, Gettysburg's most haunted ground, where the battlefield never went silent. There are battlefields that become history, and there are battlefields that become memory. Gettysburg is both. For 3 days in July of 1863, more than 160,000 men collided across the rolling hills of southern Pennsylvania. When the fighting finally ended, over 50,000 soldiers had been killed, wounded, captured, or declared missing. It remains the bloodiest battle ever fought on American soil. Nearly every acre of the battlefield carries a story. A farmhouse transformed into a hospital. A quiet field where thousands fell within hours. A ridge where impossible courage changed the course of the Civil War. Yet among all those places, one location has earned a reputation unlike any other. Devil's Den. Even its name feels unsettling. A massive field of ancient granite boulders, stacked in strange formations, split by narrow passages, and draped in deep shadows that linger long after sunset. The rocks appear almost unnatural. Some stand as tall as houses. Others seem balanced in ways that defy expectation. Before the battle, travelers already regarded the area with suspicion. After the battle, its reputation would change forever. On July 2nd, 1863, Devil's Den became one of the most violent places on the Gettysburg battlefield. Union sharpshooters concealed themselves among the rocks. Confederate soldiers advanced through smoke, stone, and relentless gunfire. The fighting collapsed into brutal close-range combat. Men fired from behind boulders only yards apart. When ammunition ran low, bayonets finished what rifles began. Bodies fell into narrow gaps between the rocks. Some remained there for days before they could be recovered. Veterans who survived later described Devil's Den as unlike any other part of the battlefield. Not because the fighting was worse, but because the place itself seemed to magnify the horror. When the battle ended, photographers entered the field. Among the most famous Civil War photographs ever taken was an image of a fallen Confederate soldier lying between the granite stones of Devil's Den. That single photograph became one of the defining images of Gettysburg. For decades, historians debated whether the photographer had moved the body to create a more dramatic composition. Whether true or not, the image permanently linked Devil's Den with death itself. Today, more than 160 years later, the battlefield has become one of America's most carefully preserved historic sites. Millions of visitors walk the same trails every year. Most arrive expecting history. Some leave believing they experienced something else. Cameras stop working. Batteries suddenly fail. Visitors report hearing footsteps behind them among the rocks. Others describe voices carried on the wind, though no one else is nearby. Some claim they briefly encountered a Confederate soldier standing among the boulders, only to watch him disappear moments later. Night Watch Archives does not begin with the question, "Is Devil's Den haunted?" Instead, we ask something more important. Why has this single section of the Gettysburg battlefield produced more paranormal reports than almost anywhere else in America? The answer begins, not with ghosts, but with history. Because before anyone reported seeing an apparition among these stones, thousands of men fought, bled, and died here. Tonight, we open the file, not to prove the supernatural, but to investigate how one rocky hillside became one of America's most enduring haunted landscapes. The battle that changed the ground. Every haunted location has a beginning. For Devil's Den, it was not a ghost story. It was July 2nd, 1863, the second day of the Battle of Gettysburg. Union forces occupied the rocky high ground surrounding Devil's Den. The granite formations provided natural cover. Sharpshooters hid among the boulders. Every opening between the rocks became a firing position. Every shadow concealed another rifle. Confederate troops advancing across the valley below faced an impossible task. To reach the rocks, they first crossed open ground under relentless fire. Those who survived the approach found themselves fighting through a maze of stone. Visibility disappeared. Smoke settled between the boulders. Commands became impossible to hear. The battle dissolved into dozens of separate fights taking place only yards apart. Soldiers fired around corners, across narrow crevices, sometimes at opponents they could hear, but never see. When ammunition ran low, bayonets and rifle stocks replaced bullets. It was no longer a battle of formations. It became a battle of survival. The granite itself shaped the fighting. Men climbed over enormous boulders searching for cover. Others slipped into cracks between the rocks. Some never emerged again. Bodies accumulated where they fell. Many could not be recovered until days after the fighting ended because the terrain made reaching them almost impossible. The cries of wounded soldiers echoed through the stone passages long after the battle moved elsewhere across the field. Veterans later wrote that Devil's Den possessed an atmosphere unlike any other location at Gettysburg, not because it witnessed the highest number of casualties. Other parts of the battlefield suffered even greater losses, but because the rocks trapped the sounds, the smoke, and the horror of what unfolded there. When Confederate forces finally secured portions of Devil's Den, the fighting had already transformed the landscape into something almost unrecognizable. Discarded rifles, broken artillery equipment, torn uniforms, blood covering the stone, silence replacing gunfire. It was a silence earned at tremendous cost. Then came the photographers. Within days of the battle, men carrying large wooden cameras carefully moved across the battlefield, documenting its aftermath. Among the images they captured, none became more famous than the photograph of a fallen Confederate soldier resting between the rocks of Devil's Den. For generations, historians debated whether the body had been moved before the photograph was taken, whether the scene represented documentation or composition. That debate continues today, regardless of the answer. The photograph permanently connected Devil's Den with death in the American imagination. It transformed one section of the battlefield into one of the Civil War's most recognizable images. Perhaps that is why so many later visitors describe an immediate change upon entering the rocks. The battlefield feels different. The air seems heavier. Conversations become quieter. People instinctively lower their voices, whether that response comes from history, expectation, or something still unexplained. Nearly everyone agrees on one point. Devil's Den does not feel like an ordinary historic site. It feels like a place where the battle never completely ended, and for many visitors, that feeling is only the beginning of the investigation. The witnesses who never expected to see anything. History explains why people visit Devil's Den. It does not explain why so many leave describing experiences they cannot account for. Unlike abandoned houses or forgotten cemeteries, Devil's Den is never truly empty. Every year, hundreds of thousands of people walk the trails winding between the granite boulders. Families, historians, photographers, park rangers, Civil War enthusiasts, most come searching for the past. Some leave believing the past was searching for them. One of the oldest and most frequently reported encounters involves a figure known simply as the Confederate. Witnesses consistently describe a young soldier wearing a worn grey uniform, often barefoot, sometimes carrying a rifle. He appears quietly among the rocks, looking completely solid. Some witnesses believe he is a reenactor. Others assume he is a park employee in period clothing. Then something impossible happens. The soldier smiles, gestures toward the battlefield, or simply watches in silence. Seconds later, he is gone. No footsteps, no path of retreat. Nothing. Over the decades, park personnel have collected remarkably similar accounts from visitors who had never spoken to one another. Descriptions remain consistent despite being separated by years, sometimes decades. Other witnesses describe hearing sounds where silence should exist. A distant drum, the sharp report of a musket, metal striking stone. Voices carried softly through the rocks. Most are faint, almost beyond hearing, just enough to make someone stop walking and listen. When they do, the sound disappears. Electronic equipment has generated its own collection of reports. Visitors have described camera batteries draining unexpectedly, digital photographs refusing to save, audio recordings capturing whispers that no one remembers hearing at the time. None of these reports establish proof of paranormal activity. Electronic devices fail for countless ordinary reasons. Yet their repeated appearance at Devil's Den has become part of the location's enduring reputation. Modern visitors continue reporting unexplained equipment malfunctions, whispered voices, and fleeting apparitions among the granite formations. Perhaps the most compelling reports come from people with nothing to gain. National Park Service employees, maintenance workers, law enforcement officers, individuals who spend hundreds of hours on the battlefield every year. Many are reluctant to discuss unusual experiences publicly, yet quietly, among themselves, stories continue to circulate. A ranger locking the gates one summer evening heard laughter echoing through the rocks. Believing visitors had remained after closing, he climbed toward the sound. The laughter stopped. Then came the faint metallic sound of equipment striking stone. When he reached the top, no one was there. Another ranger reported seeing movement tracked briefly on monitoring equipment despite the surrounding ground remaining completely empty. Maintenance crews working before dawn have described hearing quiet conversations carried across the battlefield, only to discover they were entirely alone. What makes these reports noteworthy is not their dramatic nature. Most are surprisingly ordinary. A sound, a figure, a feeling that someone is nearby. None lasts very long. None provides undeniable proof. Instead, they leave behind something investigators value just as highly: consistency. Different witnesses, different decades, different circumstances, yet remarkably similar experiences. Night Watch archives cannot determine whether those experiences originate from the battlefield itself, from human expectation, or from something that has yet to be understood. But when independent reports continue repeating across generations, they deserve to be preserved. Because once a pattern begins to emerge, an old ghost story becomes something more. It becomes an investigation. Why Devil's Den refuses to let go. Not every battlefield becomes haunted. Thousands of battlefields exist throughout the world. Many witnessed unimaginable violence. Most are remembered through monuments, museums, and history books. Only a handful develop reputations that endure for generations. Devil's Den is one of them. The obvious question is, why? Some believe the answer lies in the violence itself. More than 5,000 casualties occurred in and around Devil's Den, the wheat field, and the Valley of Death during some of the fiercest fighting of the battle. Men died within feet of one another. Others remained wounded among the rocks for hours, calling for help that often could not reach them. For those who accept the possibility of residual hauntings, places like Devil's Den provide the perfect conditions. The theory suggests that emotionally intense events may somehow become imprinted upon a location. Rather than intelligent spirits, witnesses experience echoes, moments repeating without awareness, footsteps, voices, a distant drum. The brief appearance of a soldier who neither recognizes nor acknowledges the modern world around him. Other investigators reject that explanation entirely. They point instead towards psychology. Gettysburg is one of America's most emotionally significant historic sites. Visitors arrive already aware of the suffering that occurred there. Expectation, combined with imagination, may influence how ordinary sounds and shadows are interpreted. That possibility deserves serious consideration. History carries emotional weight. Emotion shapes perception. Night Watch archives recognizes both. Neither explanation fully accounts for every report. Neither has been conclusively proven. That uncertainty is precisely what keeps the investigation alive. Even experienced park employees occasionally describe moments that resist easy explanation. Some speak of sudden silence settling across the battlefield. Others mention areas where the atmosphere seems to change without warning. Not dramatically, subtly. Enough that longtime employees notice it immediately. One senior ranger described the most unsettling moments not as seeing apparitions, but as feeling the battlefield become unnaturally still. No wind, no birds, only the unmistakable sensation that something was about to happen. Nothing ever did. Yet the feeling remained unforgettable. Technology has done little to settle the debate. Motion sensors occasionally activate without an identifiable cause. Cameras sometimes capture anomalies later dismissed as dust, light, or digital artifacts. Audio recordings produce sounds that investigators continue debating years later. None establish definitive proof. None eliminate the possibility entirely. That is often how genuine investigations unfold, not with certainty, but with accumulating questions. Perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Devil's Den is not the reports themselves. It is their consistency. Visitors separated by decades, who never met, who never compared notes, continue describing many of the same experiences. A soldier among the rocks, voices carried on still air. The strange sensation that the battlefield remains occupied. whether those experiences originate from memory, environment, human psychology, or something beyond present understanding, cannot yet be answered. Night Watch Archives does not close investigations because certainty is absent. We preserve them because the questions endure. And after more than a century and a half, Devil's Den continues asking the same question of everyone who walks among its granite stones. What, exactly, still remains here? The record endures. Every battlefield tells a story. Gettysburg tells thousands. Some are preserved in official reports. Others survive in letters written home. Many are carved into monuments standing across the rolling hills. And a few continue to be told by those who walk the battlefield today. Throughout this investigation, we have examined the history of Devil's Den, the brutal fighting that transformed the granite outcrop into one of the deadliest positions on the battlefield, the famous photographs that forever linked the location with the aftermath of war, the eyewitness reports that have accumulated for more than a century, and the continuing efforts to understand why this single section of Gettysburg produces so many unexplained experiences. No investigation has proven that Devil's Den is haunted. No scientific study has identified a measurable paranormal phenomenon. At the same time, no ordinary explanation has completely accounted for the remarkable consistency of the reports. Visitors continue describing a barefoot Confederate soldier. Park employees continue sharing unusual experiences. Investigators continue documenting voices, footsteps, and moments that resist simple explanation. Perhaps that is why Devil's Den has never faded into legend. It continues producing new witnesses. Every year, someone arrives expecting nothing more than a history lesson. Every year, someone leaves with a story they struggle to explain. Night Watch Archives does not ask listeners to choose between belief and skepticism. Our responsibility is different. We preserve the historical record. We document the eyewitnesses. We separate established history from enduring folklore. And we acknowledge when the evidence reaches the limits of what it can presently answer. The Battle of Gettysburg ended on July 3rd, 1863. History records the final shots, the casualty reports, the retreat, the preservation of the battlefield. Those events are no longer debated. What happened afterward still is. Whether the experiences reported at Devil's Den originate from human psychology, residual environmental effects, misidentification, or something beyond current understanding, remains unresolved. That uncertainty is not a weakness. It is the reason this investigation remains open. For Night Watch Archives, this concludes only one investigation within the Gettysburg collection. The battlefield extends for thousands of acres. Little Round Top, the wheat field, the Valley of Death, the Jenny Wade House, the Farnsworth House, Seminary Ridge. Each possesses its own history, its own witnesses, its own unanswered questions. Each deserves its own file, because Gettysburg is not haunted by a single story. It is haunted by an entire battlefield, and every path across those fields leads to another investigation waiting inside the archive. Until that file is opened, the record remains preserved, waiting. Case file 005 is now closed. The truth waits in the dark.